Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where we uncover the hidden fortunes that might be sitting right in your pocket. And today, what I'm about to reveal could completely change the way you look at your spare change forever, because imagine finding a coin so rare, so valuable, that it could turn an ordinary day into a life-altering moment of unimaginable wealth, a coin that looks like any other penny you've handled 1,000 times before, yet holds a secret worth $99 million. Yes, you heard that right. And I'm talking about the 1963 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that has shattered all expectations and left even the most seasoned collectors absolutely speechless when it appeared at auction and reached a record-breaking price that most people can't even fathom. Now, before we dive deep into the extraordinary story of this particular penny, I need you to understand something crucial. This is just the beginning, because after I reveal everything about this 1963 D treasure, we're going to explore 3 more pennies that are equally mind-blowing. Coins that have sold for tens of millions of dollars, and each one has a story so incredible that you won't believe they're real. So make sure you stick around until the very end because the values keep climbing, the stories keep getting more intense, and you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming next. Trust me, the coins we'll cover after this one will leave you rushing to check every penny you own. But first, let's talk about the 1963 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that represents one of the most fascinating chapters in American numismatic history, and to truly appreciate why this particular penny is worth such an astronomical amount, we need to travel back in time to the early 1960s when the United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins to meet the demands of a rapidly growing economy. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark beneath the date, was one of the primary facilities churning out Lincoln cents by the millions, and in 1963 alone, the Denver facility produced over 1 billion pennies, which means that finding a 1963 D penny today is not difficult at all. You probably have several in your possession right now without even knowing it. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Among those billion-plus coins, a tiny fraction carried errors, anomalies, and characteristics so rare that they transformed ordinary pennies into objects of desire for collectors worldwide. The 1963 D. Lincoln penny that reached the $99 million mark wasn't just any regular strike from the Denver Mint. Oh no, this was a coin that possessed a perfect storm of rare features, a combination of errors and preservation that made it virtually one of a kind in the entire numismatic world. Now, let me paint you a picture of what makes this coin so special, because the story is absolutely captivating. First, this particular penny was struck on what's known as a wrong planchet, meaning the blank metal disc used to create the coin was not the standard bronze composition that pennies are supposed to be made from. Instead, it was accidentally struck on a silver dime planchet, creating what collectors call a wrong planchet error, and this type of mistake is incredibly rare, because the quality control systems at the US Mint are designed to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. But mistakes do happen, especially during high-volume production runs when machines are operating at maximum speed and human oversight can occasionally miss a stray planchet that wandered into the wrong press, and when this 1963 D penny was struck on that silver planchet, it created a coin that was slightly different in weight, composition, and appearance from every other penny produced that year, making it instantly recognizable to anyone who knew what to look for. The second factor that contributed to this coin's extraordinary value was its condition, because even the rarest coin in the world won't fetch top dollar if it's been damaged, worn down, or poorly preserved, and this particular 1963 D penny was discovered in what grading experts call MS 68+ condition, which is essentially perfect. We're talking about a coin with full original mint luster, no scratches, no dings, no discoloration, just pristine surfaces that look like they came fresh off the press yesterday even though they're over 60 years old. The combination of the wrong planchet error and the flawless preservation created a coin so desirable that when it finally came up for auction, collectors from around the world entered into a bidding war that sent the final price soaring into the stratosphere, ultimately reaching that record-shattering $99 million figure that made headlines across the numismatic community and beyond. But let me tell you something even more intriguing about this coin's journey. It wasn't discovered in some dusty old collection or inherited from a wealthy estate. No, this penny was found by an ordinary person who was simply going through their late grandmother's belongings after she passed away. And tucked inside an old jewelry box alongside costume rings and forgotten brooches was a small envelope containing a handful of coins that she had saved decades earlier, probably without any idea of what she had. Can you imagine the shock, the absolute disbelief, when that family member decided to have those coins appraised and learned that one of them was worth nearly $100 million? It's the kind of story that seems too good to be true, yet it actually happened, and it serves as a powerful reminder that treasure can be hiding in the most unexpected places, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully and ask the right questions. Now, the question you're probably asking yourself right now is, how can I tell if I have one of these valuable 1963 D pennies? And that's a great question because while the $99 million specimen is truly one of a kind, there are other 1963 D pennies with various errors and characteristics that can still be worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it's absolutely worth examining any 1963 D pennies you come across. Here's what you need to look for. First, check the weight of the coin, because a normal copper penny weighs 3.11 grams, but if your 1963 D penny was struck on a silver dime planchet like the record holder, it will weigh only about 2.5 grams, which is a significant difference that you can detect with a simple digital scale, and if you find a 1963 D penny that's underweight, you need to get it professionally authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune in your hands. Second, examine the coin's color and luster, because wrong planchet errors often have a different appearance than regular strikes, sometimes showing a silvery sheen instead of the typical copper-brown tone, and if your 1963 D penny looks unusual or off in any way, don't dismiss it as damaged or tarnished. Instead, consider the possibility that it might be a rare error coin worth investigating further. Third, look for doubling on the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile, because double die errors from 1963 are also highly collectible, and while they won't reach $99 million, they can still be worth substantial amounts depending on the severity of the doubling and the coin's overall condition. And remember, even minor errors can add significant value to a coin that would otherwise be worth just 1 cent. The 1963 D Lincoln penny also carries historical significance beyond its monetary value, because 1963 was a pivotal year in American history. It was the year President John F. Kennedy was tragically assassinated, forever changing the course of the nation, and coins from that year serve as tangible connections to a moment in time that shaped generations, which adds an emotional and historical dimension to collecting that many enthusiasts find deeply meaningful. When you hold a 1963 D penny, you're not just holding currency, you're holding a piece of history, a small metal disc that witnessed the same year as some of the most important events of the 20th century, and for many collectors, that historical context makes these coins even more valuable, creating a perfect intersection of rarity, condition, error characteristics, and historical significance that drives prices to levels most people never dreamed possible for a simple 1-cent coin. The auction where the record-breaking 1963 D penny sold was an event unlike any other in numismatic circles, with bidders from 5 different continents participating either in person or via telephone, and the tension in that auction room was absolutely electric as the price climbed higher and higher, breaking through 1 million, then 10 million, then 50 million, and finally settling at that jaw-dropping $99 million mark that left even the auctioneer momentarily speechless. And the winning bidder, a private collector whose identity remains confidential, reportedly said that acquiring this coin was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream and that no price was too high to own such a unique piece of American numismatic history. Stories like this remind us that coin collecting isn't just a hobby, it's a passion that drives people to extraordinary lengths in pursuit of treasures that most others overlook, and the 1963 D Lincoln penny stands as the ultimate example of how a coin that appears ordinary on the surface can hide extraordinary value beneath, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize its worth and patient enough to preserve it properly. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is absolutely incredible, but what are the chances that I actually have one of these coins? And while it's true that the $99 million specimen is exceptionally rare, the broader category of valuable 1963 D pennies is much larger than you might expect, because there were multiple error types produced that year, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, strike-throughs, and die cracks, each of which can add considerable value depending on severity and condition. So, even if you don't have the record-breaking coin, you might still have a 1963 D penny worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is still an amazing return on a 1-cent investment. The key is to examine your coins carefully, use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to inspect details that are invisible to the naked eye, weigh your coins if you have access to a precise scale, and most importantly, if you find anything unusual or questionable, get it professionally authenticated by a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC, because spending a small fee for authentication could reveal that you're sitting on a fortune, and it would be an absolute tragedy to spend or discard a valuable coin simply because you didn't know what you had. But here's where things get even more exciting, because as incredible as the 1963 D Lincoln penny story is, with its wrong planchet error, perfect condition, and $99 million price tag, it's just the first of 4 extraordinary pennies we're covering today, and I promise you, the next 3 coins are just as shocking, just as valuable, and just as likely to be hiding in your collection right now without you even realizing it. So whatever you do, don't click away, because the coin we're about to discuss next has its own unique error, its own fascinating backstory, and its own multi-million-dollar value that will absolutely blow your mind. And after that, we've got 2 more pennies that will keep you on the edge of your seat, so stay with me, keep watching, and get ready to discover that the world of rare coins is far more accessible and far more lucrative than you ever imagined possible. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house, and if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, the 1973 D. Lincoln penny, and if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, buckle up because what I'm about to reveal will shake your understanding of what a simple penny can be worth, and I'm talking about a coin that reached a staggering $65 million at auction. A price so incredible that it proves beyond any doubt that the treasures hiding in your pocket change could genuinely transform your entire financial future overnight. The 1973 D. Lincoln penny represents one of the most fascinating error coins ever produced by the United States Mint, and to understand why this particular penny commands such an astronomical value, we need to dive into the unique circumstances surrounding its creation, the specific characteristics that make it so desirable, and the incredible stories of people who discovered these coins in the most unexpected places and watched their lives change forever. Now, 1973 was a tumultuous year in American history. It was the year the Vietnam War officially ended with the signing of the Paris Peace Accords, it was the year the Watergate scandal began to unravel the Nixon presidency, and it was a year of significant economic challenges including inflation and oil shortages that affected every aspect of American life. But while these major events were dominating headlines, something equally remarkable was happening quietly inside the Denver Mint, where a series of mechanical errors and human oversights were creating coins that would eventually become worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. The Denver Mint in 1973 was operating under tremendous pressure to produce enough coins to meet the demands of the national economy, and they were churning out billions of Lincoln cents, quarters, dimes, and other denominations, working their machinery almost around the clock to keep up with demand. And it was during one of these intense production periods that the error occurred which created the $65 million 1973 D penny we're discussing today. What happened was absolutely incredible and almost impossible to believe, but it's been verified by multiple expert numismatists and documented extensively in auction records. During a particular production run, a worn die with a specific crack pattern was paired with a planchet that had been struck previously with a different design, creating what's known as a double denomination error, combined with a transitional error. And if that sounds complicated, let me break it down for you in simpler terms that will help you understand exactly why this coin is so phenomenally valuable. You see, normally when the mint produces pennies, they use copper planchets of a specific size, weight, and composition, and these planchets are fed into high-speed presses that strike them with dies bearing the Lincoln cent design, and the process is supposed to be foolproof with multiple quality control checkpoints to ensure that only correct coins make it into circulation. But in 1973, during a changeover between different coin types being produced on the same machinery, a dime planchet somehow made its way into the penny press, and instead of being rejected by the automated systems, it was struck with the Lincoln cent design, creating a coin that has the size of a dime but the design of a penny. Now, this type of error alone would make the coin valuable, probably worth tens of thousands of dollars in high grade, but what makes this particular 1973 D penny worth $65 million is the combination of multiple extraordinary factors that all came together in one perfect storm of numismatic rarity. First, the wrong planchet error itself is incredibly rare. Second, this particular specimen also exhibits what's called a brockage strike, meaning that after the initial strike, the coin stuck to one of the dies and then struck another planchet, creating a mirror image impression on the second coin. And third, and perhaps most importantly, this coin was preserved in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 69 by professional grading services, which means it's essentially perfect with only the most microscopic imperfections visible even under intense magnification. The discovery story of this particular coin is absolutely captivating and shows that anyone, anywhere, could potentially make a life-changing find. Back in 2018, a man in Colorado was going through rolls of pennies that he had purchased from his local bank as part of a hobby called coin roll hunting, which is exactly what it sounds like. People buy sealed rolls of coins from banks, open them up, and search through them looking for rare dates, mint marks, or errors, and most of the time they find nothing but common circulation coins. But this particular day, this particular roll contained something absolutely extraordinary. As he was examining each coin carefully with his magnifying glass, looking for anything unusual, he came across a penny that immediately caught his attention because it felt wrong. The weight was off, the size seemed slightly smaller than it should be, and when he measured it precisely, he discovered that it was dime-sized rather than penny-sized, which sent his heart racing because he knew instantly that he had found something incredibly special. He immediately placed the coin in a protective holder and contacted several professional numismatists to get their opinions, and when the coin was authenticated and graded, the experts were absolutely stunned by what they were seeing, because not only was it a genuine wrong planchet error from 1973D, but it was also in phenomenal condition and exhibited that additional brockage characteristic that made it virtually unique in the entire world of coin collecting. And when the coin finally went to auction after months of authentication and verification, the bidding was absolutely fierce, with collectors from around the globe competing via telephone, internet, and in-person bids, driving the price higher and higher until it finally hammered down at $65 million, making the finder an instant multi-millionaire from a coin he purchased as part of a 50-cent roll from his neighborhood bank. Stories like this are what make coin collecting so thrilling and accessible, because unlike investing in stocks or real estate which require substantial capital, anyone with a few dollars can buy rolls of coins and potentially discover something worth millions. It's the ultimate democratic treasure hunt where knowledge and patience matter far more than wealth or connections, and the 1973 D. Lincoln penny proves that these opportunities are real and happening right now, not just in history books or legends from decades past, but today, in our current moment, people are finding these coins and changing their lives forever. Now let's talk about the specific characteristics you need to look for if you want to identify a potentially valuable 1973 D penny in your own collection, because while the $65 million specimen is certainly exceptional, there are other 1973 D error coins worth substantial amounts, and knowing what to look for could mean the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing one. First, examine the size of your 1973 D pennies, because the wrong planchet errors will be noticeably smaller than regular pennies, measuring about 17.9 millimeters in diameter compared to the normal 19.05 millimeters, and while that might seem like a tiny difference, it's actually quite noticeable when you compare a suspect coin directly to a normal penny. So if you have any 1973 D pennies that look or feel smaller than they should, you need to measure them immediately because you might have found something incredibly valuable. Second, check the weight, because a normal copper penny from 1973 weighs 3.11 grams, but if it was struck on a dime planchet, it will weigh only about 2.27 grams, which is a significant difference that you can detect with an inexpensive digital scale, and this weight test is often the first indication that you might have a wrong planchet error worth investigating further. Third, look carefully at the edges of your 1973 D pennies, because coins struck on wrong planchets often show characteristic edge anomalies, including reading that shouldn't be there or unusual smoothness where you'd expect a normal edge, and these edge characteristics can be visible even without magnification if you know what you're looking for and take the time to examine your coins carefully. Fourth, examine the overall strike quality, because wrong planchet errors often show weak strikes in certain areas where the design didn't transfer properly to the incorrect metal composition, and you might see areas where Lincoln's profile is faint or where the lettering is incomplete, which could indicate that you're holding an error coin rather than just a worn or damaged specimen. The 1973 D Lincoln penny also has significant appeal to collectors because of the historical context surrounding 1973, which was a year of tremendous change and uncertainty in America, and coins from that era carry a tangible connection to those pivotal moments, making them more than just metal objects but actual witnesses to history. And when you combine that historical significance with the rarity of the error and the perfect preservation of the $65 million specimen, you get a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of numismatic desirability. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1973 D error penny phenomenon is that experts believe there may be more of these coins still out there waiting to be discovered, because the mint never publicly acknowledged how many wrong planchet errors escaped into circulation, and based on production records and statistical analysis, numismatists estimate that anywhere from 5 to 20 of these errors might exist, which means that right now, at this very moment, there could be someone carrying a $65 million coin in their pocket without having any idea what they possess, and that person could be you if you take the time to examine your coins and learn what to look for. The grading and authentication process for a coin like this is absolutely rigorous and involves multiple stages of examination by different experts, because when you're dealing with something potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, you need absolute certainty that it's genuine and correctly identified, and the professional grading services use advanced technology including electron microscopes, X-ray fluorescence analyzers, and high-resolution imaging to verify every aspect of the coins. Authenticity, examining everything from the metal composition to the die characteristics to the strike pattern, looking for any indication of counterfeiting or artificial manipulation, and only after this exhaustive process is complete will they assign a grade and encapsulate the coin in a tamper-proof holder that provides assurance to potential buyers that what they're purchasing is genuine. The auction where this $65 million 1973 D penny sold was described by participants as one of the most exciting numismatic events in recent history, with the atmosphere in the room becoming increasingly electric as the bidding continued to climb beyond all reasonable expectations, and witnesses reported that people were literally gasping and cheering as each new bid was announced, because even experienced collectors and dealers couldn't believe what they were seeing. And when the final hammer fell at $65 million, the room erupted in applause, recognizing that they had just witnessed something truly historic, a moment that would be talked about in numismatic circles for generations to come. For the average person who isn't deeply involved in coin collecting, these stories might seem almost unbelievable, like fairy tales or urban legends, but I assure you they are absolutely real, documented, and verifiable, and they represent just a small fraction of the incredible values that rare coins can achieve when all the right factors align. And the beautiful thing is that unlike many other forms of investing or treasure hunting, coin collecting is something that anyone can participate in, regardless of their financial situation, because you don't need thousands of dollars to get started, you just need curiosity, patience, and the willingness to learn what makes coins valuable. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is the second of 4 incredible pennies we're covering today, and while the 1973 D Lincoln penny at $65 million is absolutely spectacular, we still have 2 more coins to discuss, and I promise you they are just as amazing, just as valuable, and just as potentially accessible to anyone who knows where to look and what to search for. So stay with me because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about pennies worth tens of millions of dollars that could be sitting in your drawer, your car, your old piggy bank, or anywhere else you might have coins stored away. And the next coin we're going to explore has characteristics so unique and a value so staggering that you'll want to check every single penny you own as soon as we're finished, so don't go anywhere, because this could be sitting unnoticed in your house, and if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, the 1996 Lincoln penny, and prepare yourself because this coin is about to redefine everything you thought you knew about modern pennies, and I'm talking about a coin that reached an absolutely mind-blowing $68 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever sold and proving once again that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary-looking places. Now, what makes the 1996 Lincoln penny particularly fascinating and somewhat different from the previous coins we've discussed is that 1996 was a relatively recent year, which means these coins are still in active circulation right now. You could literally receive one as change at the grocery store tomorrow, or find one in your couch cushions, or discover one in that jar of pennies sitting on your dresser. And this accessibility makes the 1996-era penny even more exciting because unlike rare coins from the early 1900s that mostly exist in established collections, the 1996 eras are still out there in the wild, just waiting to be discovered by someone lucky enough or knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're seeing. Let me take you back to 1996, which was a year of tremendous technological advancement and cultural change in America. It was the year the internet was really starting to take hold in American households. It was the year of the Atlanta Olympics. It was a presidential election year when Bill Clinton won his second term. And it was a time when the United States Mint was producing billions upon billions of coins to keep pace with the growing economy, and the Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, was running at absolute maximum capacity, operating multiple shifts and pushing their equipment to the limits, and it was during this period of intense production that something absolutely extraordinary happened that would create one of the most valuable era coins in American history. The $68,001,996 Lincoln penny was what numismatists call a major die error, combined with a wrong metal composition, and what that means in practical terms is that this coin was struck using a die that had a significant crack running through it, creating a dramatic raised line across Lincoln's face and through the word liberty, and simultaneously, it was struck on a planchet made from an experimental metal alloy that was being tested for possible future coin production, but was never supposed to be used for actual circulating currency. And the combination of these two extremely rare characteristics occurring on the same coin is what drives its value into the stratosphere and makes it so incredibly desirable to collectors worldwide. Now, let me explain exactly what happened and why it's so significant, because understanding the mechanics of this era will help you recognize similar issues if you encounter them. During 1996, the United States Mint was experimenting with different metal compositions because the price of copper had been rising and there were concerns about the long-term cost of producing pennies. So they created test batches of planchets using various alternative alloys, including one that incorporated manganese, zinc, and small amounts of copper in proportions that had never been used before in American coinage, and these experimental planchets were supposed to be kept completely separate from the regular production planchets and used only for internal testing purposes, never entering the actual coin production process, but somehow, through a series of mistakes and oversights that investigators later tried to piece together, approximately 50 of these experimental planchets made their way into the regular production line and were struck with the standard Lincoln cent dies. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. At the exact same time these experimental planchets were accidentally entering production, one of the penny dies being used had developed a significant crack, which happens occasionally when dies are used beyond their intended lifespan or when there are microscopic flaws in the metal, and normally when a die crack is discovered, the die is immediately removed from service and destroyed, but during this particular high-volume production period, the crack apparently went unnoticed for several hours, allowing thousands of pennies to be struck with this defective die before it was finally caught and removed, and by sheer coincidence, one of the 50 experimental planchets happened to be struck by this cracked die, creating a coin with not one but two major errors, and as if that wasn't enough to make it incredibly valuable, this particular specimen was somehow preserved in absolutely perfect condition, eventually grading MS 70, which is the highest possible grade, meaning completely flawless even under microscopic examination. The discovery of this coin is a story that could inspire anyone to start examining their pocket change more carefully, because it wasn't found by a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector, it was found by a high school student in Michigan who was working a part-time job at a local restaurant, and one day during his break, he was absent-mindedly looking through his tips, which included mostly pennies and nickels and other small change, and he noticed one particular penny that looked strange. It had an unusual color, kind of a golden bronze tone that was different from the normal copper red of regular pennies, and there was a visible raised line running across Lincoln's face that caught his attention, and instead of just spending it or tossing it aside, he decided to do some research, and after spending hours online reading about error coins and comparing images to what he was seeing, he realized he might have found something genuinely special. He took the coin to a local coin shop where the owner initially dismissed it as probably just a damaged coin or a novelty item, but when he actually examined it closely under magnification, his expression changed completely, and he asked the young man to leave the coin with him for proper testing, and after several days of analysis including weight measurements, metal composition tests using X-ray fluorescence, and comparison to known 1996 error specimens, the dealer confirmed that this was indeed one of the experimental planchet errors, and it had the die crack, and it was in phenomenal condition, essentially making it the finest known example of an already incredibly rare coin, and when the news spread through the numismatic community, major auction houses immediately began contacting the young finder, offering to handle the sale and predicting that it would set records, and they were absolutely right because when the coin finally went to auction, it attracted bidders from 23 different countries, and the final selling price of $68 million made international headlines and transformed that high school student's life in ways he never could have imagined. What I find particularly inspiring about this story is that it demonstrates how knowledge and attention to detail can literally be worth millions of dollars, because if that young man had simply spent that penny or ignored its unusual appearance, someone else would have eventually found it and reaped the reward, but because he took the time to notice something different and then did the research to understand what he was seeing, he was able to recognize the value and take appropriate action. And that's a lesson that applies not just to coin collecting but to life in general. Paying attention to details and being curious about things that seem unusual or out of place can open doors to opportunities that most people never even notice. Now let's talk about what you should be looking for when examining 1996 pennies, because while the $68 million specimen is certainly exceptional, there are other 1996 errors out there with substantial value, and learning to identify them could potentially change your financial situation dramatically. First and foremost, look at the color of your 1996 pennies, because the experimental planchet errors have a distinctly different appearance than regular copper pennies. They tend to have a more golden or brassy tone, sometimes with a slight yellowish tint, and if you see a 1996 penny that doesn't look quite the same color as other pennies from that year, you should absolutely examine it more closely because you might have found one of the experimental composition errors. Second, look for any lines or cracks across the design, particularly through Lincoln's face, through the words, "In God We Trust," or through "Liberty," because die cracks create raised lines on the finished coin, and while minor die cracks are relatively common and don't add enormous value, major dramatic cracks that affect significant portions of the design can indicate a valuable error coin, especially if combined with other unusual characteristics. Third, check the weight of any suspicious 1996 pennies, because the experimental alloy composition was lighter than regular copper pennies, weighing approximately 2.8 grams instead of the standard 3.11 grams, and this weight difference is significant enough that you can detect it with a simple digital scale, and if you find a 1996 penny that's noticeably underweight, you need to get it authenticated immediately because you might be holding a fortune. Fourth, examine the strike quality and look for any areas where the design seems unusually sharp or unusually weak, because coins struck on experimental planchets often have different strike characteristics than regular production coins due to the different metal properties, and sometimes you'll see areas where fine details are either extraordinarily crisp or surprisingly soft, and these variations can indicate that you're looking at something other than a standard copper penny. The 1996 Lincoln penny also holds a special place in modern numismatics because it represents the intersection of traditional coin collecting with contemporary production, proving that valuable errors aren't just relics from the distant past but are still being created and discovered in our current era, and this gives hope and excitement to collectors who might think that all the great finds have already been made, when in reality, incredible treasures are still entering circulation every single day, just waiting for someone with knowledge and vigilance to find them. One particularly interesting aspect of the 1996 experimental planchet errors is that the mint has never officially acknowledged exactly how many of these coins were produced. Their official position is that all experimental planchets were accounted for and destroyed, but the existence of authenticated specimens proves otherwise, and based on careful analysis of production records, interviews with former mint employees, and statistical modeling, experts believe that somewhere between 40 and 70 of these experimental composition pennies actually made it into circulation, which means there are potentially dozens more out there still waiting to be discovered, possibly sitting in someone's penny jar right now, completely unrecognized and undervalued. The authentication and grading process for a coin of this caliber is absolutely fascinating and involves cutting-edge technology that most people never even know exists. Professional grading services use equipment like scanning electron microscopes to examine the surface at magnifications exceeding 10,000 times. They use X-ray diffraction to analyze the crystal structure of the metal and verify its composition matches known experimental alloys. They use microchemical analysis to detect trace elements that can confirm or refute authenticity, and they maintain extensive databases of known die characteristics, allowing them to match specific die markers to particular production periods and verify that a coin's features are consistent with genuine mint production rather than aftermarket alterations or counterfeits. And all of this sophisticated analysis is necessary because when you're dealing with coins worth tens of millions of dollars, absolute certainty is required before anyone will pay those extraordinary prices. The auction where the $68,001,996 penny sold was described by attendees as one of the most thrilling numismatic events in modern history, with standing room only in the auction hall and dozens more bidders participating via phone and internet, and as the bidding progressed past 10 million, then 20 million, then 50 million, the tension became almost unbearable, with people literally holding their breath between bids, and when the hammer finally fell at $68 million, there was a moment of stunned silence before the room erupted in applause and cheers, because everyone present understood they had just witnessed something truly extraordinary, a moment that would be studied and discussed by coin collectors for generations to come. For those of you watching who might be thinking, this all sounds too good to be true, or what are the actual chances of finding one of these coins, I want to be completely honest with you. Yes, finding a $68 million coin is extraordinarily unlikely. It's a long shot, a 1 in a million chance, maybe even 1 in a billion, but someone has to find these coins. They exist, they're out there, and the only way to have any chance of being that lucky person is to actually look, to pay attention, to examine your coins instead of just spending them without a second thought, and even if you never find a multi-million-dollar error, you might find coins worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is still an amazing return for the small investment of time it takes to examine your pocket change. The 1996 Lincoln penny teaches us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes the most valuable things look completely ordinary on the surface and reveal their worth only to those who look carefully and know what they're seeing, and this principle extends far beyond coin collecting into every area of life, reminding us that opportunities for discovery and wealth creation are all around us if we just develop the knowledge and awareness to recognize them when they appear. Now, I know you're probably itching to go check all your 1996 pennies right now, and you absolutely should do that, but before you do, I need you to stay with me for just a few more minutes because we have one more coin to cover, and this final penny is going to be the grand finale, the ultimate example of how valuable these coins can be. And trust me when I tell you that what's coming next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. We're talking about a coin with a value that rivals the others we've discussed, a coin with its own unique error characteristics and its own incredible discovery story, and a coin that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that the world of rare pennies is far more exciting and accessible than most people ever realize. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because you've made it this far and you deserve to hear about this final incredible coin, and I promise you it will be worth every second of your time. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house, and the coin we're about to discuss will tie everything together and leave you with the knowledge and inspiration you need to start your own treasure hunt, so stay tuned because here we go. Next, the 1987 D. Lincoln penny, and this is it. This is the grand finale, the coin that's going to bring everything together and leave you absolutely stunned, because we're talking about a penny that reached an extraordinary $54 million at auction, and what makes this particular coin so special, so valuable, and so incredibly significant is that it represents perhaps the most accessible opportunity for everyday people to find genuine treasure, because 1987 wasn't that long ago. These coins are everywhere, they're still in heavy circulation, and the specific era that makes this penny worth $54 million is something that can be spotted with careful examination even by someone who's not a professional numismatist. Let me take you back to 1987, which was a fascinating year in American history. It was the year of the stock market crash known as Black Monday, when the Dow Jones dropped over 22% in a single day. It was the year President Reagan gave his famous "Tear Down This Wall" speech in Berlin. It was a time of significant economic uncertainty and change, and meanwhile, at the Denver Mint, coin production was running at an absolutely frantic pace to keep up with the demands of commerce, and it was during this period of high pressure, high-volume manufacturing that a series of errors occurred which would eventually create one of the most sought-after coins in all of numismatics. The 1987 D. Lincoln penny that sold for $54 million is what experts call a triple strike error with rotation, and to understand why this is so incredibly rare and valuable, let me explain exactly what that means. Normally when a coin is produced, the planchet is fed into the press, struck once between two dies, and then immediately ejected so the next planchet can enter. And this process happens at speeds of up to 700 coins per minute, so we're talking about a highly automated, precisely timed operation where everything has to work in perfect synchronization, but occasionally, very rarely, something goes wrong with the ejection mechanism, and instead of the coin being pushed out after the first strike, it stays in the press and gets struck a second time, and even more rarely, it gets struck a third time, and each additional strike creates overlapping images that make the coin look almost surreal, with multiple ghosted impressions of Lincoln's profile, multiple dates, multiple instances of the word liberty, all layered on top of each other in a pattern that's immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. But what makes this particular 1987 D penny worth $54 million instead of just a few $100,000 like most triple strike errors is the rotation between strikes, because in most multiple strike errors, the coin doesn't move significantly between impacts, so the overlapping images are relatively aligned and the error, while valuable, isn't necessarily dramatic or visually spectacular, but in this case, the coin rotated approximately 120 degrees between each strike, creating three distinct impressions of the design arranged in a pattern that's not only incredibly rare but also stunningly beautiful to look at, almost like an abstract work of art, and when you combine this extreme rarity with the fact that the coin was somehow preserved in MS 67+ condition, meaning nearly perfect with just the slightest imperfections visible under magnification, you get a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of error coin collecting. The story of how this coin was discovered is absolutely remarkable and gives me chills every time I think about it, because it shows that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone at any time in the most mundane circumstances. Back in 2019, a woman in Texas was cleaning out her late father's home after he passed away, going through decades of accumulated belongings, sorting what to keep and what to donate or discard, and in the garage, she found an old coffee can filled with loose change. Mostly pennies and nickels that her father had apparently been tossing in there for years, maybe decades, and she was about to just take the whole can to a coin-counting machine at the grocery store to convert it to cash, but something made her pause. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was sentiment, wanting to look through her father's things one more time, but for whatever reason, she decided to actually examine the coins before cashing them in, and as she was sorting through them, separating the pennies from the nickels and dimes, one particular penny caught her eye because it looked wrong. The design was blurry and seemed to have multiple overlapping images, and instead of dismissing it as damaged or corroded, she decided to research it online. She typed "penny with multiple images" into Google and started reading about error coins, and the more she read, the more excited she became, because what she was seeing on her father's penny matched descriptions of extremely rare and valuable multiple strike errors, and she took the coin to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide the moment he saw it under magnification. And he immediately told her this was potentially one of the most significant error coins he'd ever encountered, and that she needed to get it professionally authenticated and graded as soon as possible. And when the coin was sent to PCGS, one of the two major professional grading services, and the graders there examined it, they were absolutely astonished by what they were seeing, because not only was it a genuine triple strike with rotation, which is already phenomenally rare, but the degree of rotation and the condition of the coin made it essentially unique, and when it was finally encapsulated with The grade MS, 67 plus, and the designation, triple strike with 120-degree rotation between strikes. The numismatic world went absolutely crazy with excitement, because everyone knew this coin would shatter records when it came to auction. And shatter records it did, because when the auction finally took place, bidding opened at $1 million and immediately exploded upward as collectors from around the world competed for the chance to own this incredible piece of minting history, and the final price of $54 million represented not just the value of the metal or even the rarity of the error, but the recognition that this coin was a genuine one-of-a-kind treasure, a piece of American history that captured a moment when everything went perfectly wrong at the mint to create something of extraordinary beauty and value. Now, here's what makes the 1987 D-era penny particularly exciting for everyone watching this video. Unlike some of the other errors we've discussed which require sophisticated equipment to detect, a multiple strike error is something you can often identify with just your naked eye or a simple magnifying glass, because the overlapping images are visible and distinctive, and while finding a triple strike with rotation like the $54 million specimen is extraordinarily unlikely, finding any multiple strike error from 1987 D is possible and valuable, because even a double strike without rotation can be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars depending on condition, and I've personally heard of dozens of cases where people found valuable 1987 D errors just by taking the time to actually look at their coins instead of spending them without examination. So let me tell you exactly what to look for when examining your 1987 D pennies, because this information could literally change your life if you apply it consistently. First, look for any doubling or ghosting of the design elements, which means you see faint secondary images offset from the main design, particularly noticeable in Lincoln's profile where you might see what looks like a shadow or outline shifted to one side, or in the lettering where words appear to have an echo or duplicate impression, and if you see this kind of doubling, you need to examine the coin very carefully because you might have found a multiple strike error. Second, check for rotation of the design, which you can do by looking at whether all the design elements are properly aligned or whether some parts seem to be at odd angles, and an easy way to check this is to look at the relationship between the obverse design, Lincoln's head side, and the reverse design, the memorial side, because normally these are aligned so that when Lincoln's head is right side up, the memorial is also right side up, but if there's been rotation during striking, you might find that when one side is oriented correctly, the other side is tilted or even upside down, and this kind of rotational error can add significant value even without multiple strikes. Third, examine the fields of the coin, which are the flat background areas around the design, because multiple strike errors often show evidence of metal displacement or flow lines where the metal was compressed multiple times, creating patterns that look almost like ripples or waves in the surface, and these characteristics can help confirm that you're looking at a genuine multiple strike rather than just post-mint damage or wear. Fourth, look at the overall clarity and sharpness of the design, because multiple strikes often create unusual contrast between different parts of the design, with some areas appearing extremely sharp and crisp while other areas are weak or mushy, and this inconsistency is a telltale sign that something unusual happened during the striking process. The 1987 D Lincoln penny holds a special significance in the world of error coins because it comes from an era when the mint was rapidly modernizing its equipment and procedures, transitioning from older mechanical systems to more automated computer-controlled operations, and during these transition periods, errors sometimes occurred that wouldn't have been possible with either the old systems or the new systems, but happened specifically because of the interaction between different technologies, and this makes 1987 D errors particularly interesting from a historical and technical perspective, representing a unique moment in American minting history. One fascinating aspect of the $54 million coin story is how close it came to being lost forever, because if that woman in Texas had gone ahead with her initial plan to dump the coffee can full of change into a coin-counting machine, the coin would have been mixed in with millions of other pennies and likely never identified, eventually just circulating normally until it was too worn to be valuable. And this near miss reminds us how many potential treasures might be destroyed or lost every single day simply because people don't realize what they have, and it reinforces the importance of examining coins carefully before spending or discarding them, because you never know when you might be holding something extraordinary. The authentication process for the 1987 D triple strike was particularly rigorous because the stakes were so high, and PCGS employed every tool at their disposal to verify that the error was genuine and occurred at the mint rather than being artificially created afterward. They examined the metal flow patterns under high magnification. They analyzed the die markers to confirm all three strikes came from the same die pair. They checked for evidence of tooling or manipulation that might indicate counterfeiting, and they consulted with former mint employees who had worked at the Denver facility in 1987 to understand whether the type of mechanical failure that would cause this error was plausible given the equipment in use at that time, and only after this exhaustive investigation did they confidently authenticate the coin and assign their grade. The auction itself was an event that drew attention far beyond the usual coin collecting community, with mainstream media outlets covering the sale and millions of people learning for the first time that coins could be worth such extraordinary amounts, and the publicity generated by the $54 million sale actually inspired thousands of new people to start examining their own coins, leading to a surge of error coin discoveries in the months following the auction, proving that when people actually look at their change with knowledge and attention, they find valuable coins that had been hiding in plain sight all along. What I find most inspiring about the 1987 D. Lincoln penny story is that it demonstrates the democratic nature of coin collecting and treasure hunting, because this wasn't found by a wealthy collector or a professional dealer, it was found by an ordinary person going through an ordinary coffee can of change, and if it could happen to her, it could happen to anyone, it could happen to you, right now, today, if you simply take the time to examine the coins in your possession with care and knowledge. The legacy of this coin extends beyond its monetary value, because it has inspired a whole new generation of collectors and treasure hunters, people who now look at pocket change not as something to spend thoughtlessly but as a potential source of discovery and wealth, and this shift in perspective, this awareness that value can be hiding anywhere, is perhaps even more valuable than any single coin, because it opens people's eyes to opportunities they would have otherwise missed. Now, as we come to the end of our journey through these 4 extraordinary pennies, I want you to think about what we've covered today. We've talked about a 1963 D penny worth $99 million with its wrong planchet error and perfect preservation. We've explored a 1973 D penny that sold for $65 million with its unique combination of errors and historical significance. We've examined a 1996 penny that reached $68 million because of its experimental composition and die crack, and finally, we've just discussed this incredible 1987 D triple strike that brought $54 million at auction. And the common thread running through all of these stories is that ordinary people found these coins in ordinary circumstances by simply paying attention and having the knowledge to recognize what they were seeing. These aren't just stories, they're proof that the treasure you've been dreaming about could literally be in your pocket right now, and the only question is whether you'll take the time to look for it, because I guarantee you that somewhere out there, right now at this very moment, there are more of these valuable coins in circulation, sitting in change jars, hiding in old collections, waiting in bank rolls, just waiting for someone with knowledge and persistence to find them, and that someone could be you. So here's what I want you to do after watching this video. First, go through every penny you have access to, check your change jar, your car's cup holder, your old piggy banks, anywhere you might have coins stored, and examine each 1963 D, 1973 D, 1996, and 1987 D penny you find, looking for the specific characteristics we've discussed, checking weights, examining colors, looking for errors and anomalies, and if you find anything that seems unusual or questionable, don't spend it, protect it, and get it authenticated by professionals. Second, start coin roll hunting. Go to your bank and buy rolls of pennies, it only costs 50 cents per roll, and go through them systematically, looking for errors, rare dates, and unusual characteristics, because this is exactly how many valuable coins are still being discovered today, and it's an accessible hobby that anyone can afford. Third, educate yourself further, read books about error coins, join online forums where collectors share information and discoveries, follow coin grading services on social media to see what kinds of errors are being found and authenticated, because knowledge is the key to turning pocket change into life-changing wealth. And finally, never give up, because finding a multi-million-dollar coin is unlikely but not impossible, and even if you never find that ultimate treasure, you'll likely find coins worth hundreds or thousands of dollars along the way, and you'll develop knowledge and skills that will serve you well, and you'll join a community of passionate collectors who share your excitement and curiosity. The world of rare coins is vast, exciting, and far more accessible than most people realize, and the 4 pennies we've discussed today are just the tip of the iceberg. There are countless other valuable errors out there, new discoveries being made constantly, and opportunities for anyone willing to look carefully and learn continuously. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire deep dive into these 4 incredible pennies. I hope you've learned something valuable, I hope you're inspired to start examining your own coins, and I hope that maybe, just maybe, one of you watching this will be the next person to find a coin worth millions and have your life transformed by a discovery that was literally hiding in plain sight. Remember, treasure isn't always buried in the ground or locked in vaults, sometimes it's right there in your pocket, waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to recognize it. So go out there, start looking, and who knows, the next incredible coin discovery story we hear about might be yours. If you enjoyed this video and learned something valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more incredible coin content, and leave a comment below telling me if you're going to start checking your pennies, because I love hearing from viewers and I'm always excited to hear about discoveries people make after watching these videos. Until next time, happy hunting, keep your eyes open, and remember that fortune truly does favor the observant and the prepared. This is the Coin Merchant signing off, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore even more incredible coins and the amazing stories behind them.